Hello, everyone. Hi, Casey Apran here. I am the BIT Academy Director, and we are all here to meet David Massey. He is extremely well known in the Salesforce ecosystem. He's just really kind of beloved. I mean, you mentioned Dave Massey, and people are like, oh, yes, his courses. And we feel the same way. Dave had gifted our students his admin course and his test bundle. And every single day, I know that our students are out there. They've been on LinkedIn talking about it. When they fill out their weekly status report, I get to read, what are you using? How are you studying? David Massey's course. So, we really appreciate so much, his ability to train and to teach and to help people get certified. So he has graciously agreed to be a guest speaker for us today. We have submitted some questions to him, but primarily, what is this? This is, we are basically within the last week or two from 21 students getting certified as Salesforce admins. And so exactly what Dave, has seen and shepherded students through week after week, month after month, year after year. This is just another example of students learning what it is he has to teach. So welcome, Dave. Why don't you go ahead and kind of give us your intro, tell us a little bit about you and your journey, and we'll just kick this off.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, just touching on those questions that came through. I reached out to just request if it was okay to record this session, because a lot of those questions they're just so good for, there's so many people who have the same questions and not many people are willing to ask them. And also it's going to help me raise awareness as well for the Blind Institute of Tech, because I'm going to be putting them on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and we'll just try and get more noise really and everything going. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to run through these questions from start to finish, so it provides a bit of structure. It's not going to be a bit like, question answer. I'm going to give a bit more information in there as well. And I know we're limited to an hour. If it does run over, I'm happy to carry on. So, if anyone needs to go, it's recorded. People will be able to get the answers anyway. So the first one, really, the first section of questions, I'll say, questions about my journey. Well, it was a bit, it's a bit of an unusual journey. So a lot of people tend to fall into the ecosystem through being accidental admins, or, they know someone who was in the ecosystem who got them in, or something along that way. Or they've come from like a computer science degree and they've ended up just as an apprentice somewhere or as a graduate somewhere. Mine is nothing like that at all. I have no degree. I have no IT background, apart from selling fridge freezers and cookers and laptops. That's about as far as I get, really. I mean, to give you an idea, like when it comes to actually programming, say like the Skybox, the TiVo box, or anything like that at home, my wife does it. That gives you a really good insight into how I am. But my background is sales as service. So I've worked in sales as service for 15 years, and I'd worked selling anything and everything you could think of. I'd done door-to-door sales, I'd done in supermarket or shopping mall sales as well. I'd done over the phone sales, face-to-face, car sales. That was kind of what my bag was. That's what I'd done. And I'd helped set up sales teams and set up customer service teams. And over the last probably 10 years of that career, I actually fell into selling travel. So I became a tour operator. And that was good for me because that's where my passion was. So I worked really well at it. I had a little bit of a team I looked after, was doing really well. We had this little small company. So I was a sales manager along with another guy for like a small company. And it was just growing and it was growing. The holidays were getting more and more extravagant. The value was going up. The clientele were getting more fun and more interesting. And it was all looking really good. And then COVID hit. So COVID hit in 2020. I literally drove from my house in Preston to the office in Rochdale, which is about a 90-minute drive. So I know by US standards, that's nothing, is it, 90 minutes? But in the UK, that's a long distance. I mean, we can drive from the top of Scotland to, the bottom of England in, about 6-7 hours if I put a foot down. So it's quite a distance for us, that 90 minutes. And in that drive, I walked in there. The owner of the company, Gavin, dragged me and said, Dave, got to have a word with you. Got to have a word with you here. I was like, all right, what's going on, Gav? And he was like, look, COVID's hit. And I was like, yeah, COVID's hit. I get that. It's been all over the news. yeah, well, no one's flying, pal, for the next 6 months at least. I was like, oh, God, it's a nightmare, isn't it? What are we going to do? It's like, well, you know, we're going to be putting people on minimum hours because, again, a lot of people don't realize this, but in the UK, in the travel industry, you get paid minimum wage, which is like, it was like 17 grand a year or something. It is literally the absolute minimum. It's not enough to feed yourself on it. So it's next to nothing. And I was like, all right. And he's like, you know, all that commission you due? I was like, well, yeah, it's about 20, 30 grand I'm due there in the next couple of months. That's gone, Dave. Oh, what do you mean it's gone? He's like, well, we can't pay you that because you only get that money when customers land back. So that was how it works. So I was like, right, well, what we're going to do is like, oh, and your team, their commission's gone as well. I was like, right. I was like, well, what can we do? Because we couldn't sell any holidays because, well, you're not going to book a holiday, are you, when COVID's going? Because you don't know when you could travel. So, yeah, long story short, I drove back home, got home, told my wife, so I got a wife, got 2 kids, a big dog, a house, mortgage, car payments. I was like, what are we going to do here? And I was sat there on the sofa at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, having a cup of tea. And I'm just sat there going out my mind thinking, right, I've got a little bit of money, maybe to get me through a month, and I could possibly stretch it to 2 months, but can't do 3 months. I was like, that's really going to push it too far. Also, there was credit cards and stuff I could rely on a bit, but really the writing was on the wall. I was a bit knackered. So I'm sat there just kind of thinking, what on earth am I going to do? And I was just looking around, I was thinking, and I thought, oh, I remember. So there's a guy called Anthony who I grew up with around my way, and he's now in the US as a Salesforce recruiter. And I was like, right, well, I know Ant knows recruitment. I was like, he's in recruitment. So, I mean, recruiters just get everyone jobs, don't they? Because, again, I had no idea he had specialisms. It was like, a recruiter's a recruiter, surely. Rang him up. He said, why have you looked at Salesforce? I was like tech. I was like, no chance, mate. Absolutely no good. I'm going to be with tech. And he said, just honestly have a look at it. So I went to bed, got up the next day. I still had to drive into the office. I'm there in the office. I'm just fielding phone calls from people you can imagine who are pretty upset because they're not going on holiday. But the kicker is they can't have the money back either because the airlines wouldn't give the money back. So I'm dealing with that all day. And then I end up watching a video about reports and dashboards in Salesforce. And I'm sat there and I'm thinking, right, so for me to run the end of month reports, it takes me hours, like literally hours, because I've got to factor in currency changes, I've got to factor in, you know, overcharges, undercharges, all that kind of stuff. And I watched this video, and this bloke, he creates a report in a matter of minutes. And he's like, yeah, that's done that. Now, next month, I could just hit refresh, or I could just run it again, and jobs are good, and I'll have everything live. I was like, what? I was like, this is witchcraft. This can't exist. So I kept looking at it, I started diving into it. And then, yeah, it was the end of March 2020. That was when I very first started looking at Salesforce. Got my first badge on the last day of March. And then from there, I just kind of fell into it. I was like, this is really good. I just went hell for leather, as the term is, just went for it. I was studying 2 hours in the morning. So before I go to work, I'd study when I got back from work as well. And then I'd be trying to cram in a couple of hours in the afternoons on weekends and stuff like that, which isn't easy to do when you've got kids and you've got kids clubs and stuff like that. But yeah, 51 days later, I passed my admin cert. And then it was about 30 days after that, I passed my app builder cert. And then from there, I managed to get my first job. So I landed my first job to start in the August. So I got in the August, got my job in the August, and that was 2020. Then by, I think it was February 2021, I'd carried on studying for certifications. I was working for a small consultancy, you see, so I didn't know any better. So when someone was telling me to do 10, 12, 13 projects, I'm like, that's just common, isn't it? Everyone does that. I mean, when I was in travel, I used to deal with like 20 to 40 clients at any time. And these were like really bespoke holidays as well, with like 7, 8 stops around Vietnam and Thailand. So I was like, that must just be normal, really. 10, 13 projects, easy. So I kept going and doing all these certifications. And then it just kind of gets to the point where I've got like 7 certifications since I'd started. And that was including CPQ and Field Service Lightning. So 2 of the more difficult ones as well, which again, I was like, wow. So I carried on. And then it was the December, I ended up going to a consultancy in London to see how they did it. Quickly realized that consultancy probably wasn't for me in that kind of place because it was so so documentation heavy. Like I was literally spending 80% of my time on documentation, which meant I couldn't deliver the value to customers, because it's great having a workbook so they know exactly what's been done, or a guide. But realistically, if that's taking 6 hours to do out of 8 hours, then I can only make 2 hours worth of difference actually in their org. So then one of my good friends was a guy called Johnny Fox, who's another Golden Hoodie winner. You probably know, military. And he mentioned to me, he was like, "Oh, Salesforce are hiring." I was like, "No chance, Johnny." I was like, how Salesforce going to take me on? I was like, I didn't think it. So I thought, go on, I'll interview. What have I got to lose? Went, interviewed for Salesforce, went in and landed a role as a solution engineer. And it was in May 2021. No, 2022, sorry, May 2022. So 2 years from getting my first certification, I was a lead solution engineer at Salesforce. So yeah, it was a bit of a wild ride, really. and then May this year, I like to do things in May, of course. So May 2023, I went full time at Get4 certified, and now we're coming up to the end of the year, and things are going good. Things are good.
Oh, that's really wonderful. I think that one of the fantastic things is not coming from this tech background, but not knowing that should be a problem, right? And so what you just did, because you thought, why not? I mean, let's do it, is fabulous. And so many of our students have really said the same thing. Why not just do this? Let's do it and put everything we have into it.
Exactly. And that's kind of the way I am. I'm very much an all or nothing kind of guy. If I'm not interested in something, like, I'm not interested in it. Like, my wife's a massive fan of ER, and I've had to watch numerous ER episodes. I can't tell you who any of the people are because I'm just not bothered, so I'm just not interested. But if there's something that gets me, that hooks me, and I want, then I kind of go all in it, which is what I've done with Get4 certified. Like I know you've seen the flow course occasion. Like, that was 250 hours of work boiled down to 14 hours because I did it, and I'd watch it back and I was like, no, that's not right. That's not clear enough. Let's go back and re-record it. Let me do this. So that was it. But I think for me, and this kind of moves on to the second question, really, is the skills. What skills do you bring to the table that help you the most? Now, my background is sales and service. So I'm used to dealing with customers, and I'm used to dealing with pretty unhappy customers as well. And for me, it's the soft skills. But this is the big thing, which I always try and push with a lot of people, is there's too many people out there that tell you it's all about the tech skills. You've got to be able to do this. You've got to be able to do that. I'm telling you, it isn't. Soft skills are what win. There's I don't know if is Huel a thing in the US, like the meal replacement drink or
Yes,
anything like that?
yes.
Has anyone seen the wall that they've got in their office at all? So excuse me for swearing, but it says, "Don't be a dick." And that's the best advice I can give to people, is it's all about the soft skills and the communication skills, being able to get your point across and being able to entertain and engage people. You might think that it's not really that important, but it's actually a super skill. Like, when you're sat there in a room full of C-suite executives and they're not tech savvy and they're not really interested, all they want to know is what's it going to mean for them, for their bottom line. Well, if you can portray that in a way that engages them and it makes it crystal clear, as in this is what's going to happen, and you can really tell a good story, then that can work. I mean, the guys who I've seen who've gone really far really quickly, they are the people who can talk to other people and they can ask questions. And, there's a reason you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that's because you should listen twice as much as you speak. And this is what a lot of the best guys have in common. And I've seen some tech guys, like some developers, who are unbelievable developers, but they almost have like this or this of like, I am a great developer, so I can do what I want and speak to people I want. Well, that's not how it works in the real world, is it? And that's what I've found a lot of. I mean, the other thing that I think was it's a bit of a weird thing, but I think my ignorance was really beneficial at the beginning, because I'd come into Salesforce. I didn't know anyone in Salesforce apart from my mate Ant, who was a recruiter. So I didn't know really about the Trailhead community. I didn't know about all these meetups we had. I didn't know about anything like that. So I was just single focused on getting this cert. And in my head, I was like, the admin cert. Well, that's the basic cert. It's got to be easy, right? Isn't it? It's the first cert. It's got to be easy. So I was like, I'm going at it 100%. I was like, right. I was like, there's a lot of information here, but you know, it's the easy one. It's the basic one. I've got to get this, haven't I? Well, I could tell you 11 certifications later, there's only one cert I rank harder than the admin, and that's CPQ. And I think that's because I'm rubbish with maths. But the admin cert is by far the most difficult one. So I think my ignorance was really good there. And then probably say my stubbornness as well. Like if I want to do something, like I've got to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like I've got to at least give everything I've got to get there. And so that really worked. And again, I think having 2 kids and explaining and teaching them helps as well, because it helped me to actually break down learning, to actually break down how to learn things. So yeah, I think probably in terms of what I bring is probably a little bit of stupidity and ignorance and just the ability to communicate really, and to just look at things and break it down.
And
So,
just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
As Sarah says, you know, if you can't teach it, you don't know it.
Exactly. 100%. Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, fantastic. So I know there's a lot of questions. So
yeah. I shall keep going, shall I?
Okay.
Yeah. So do you remember the first student who got certified based on your courses? Kind of. I mean, it's a bit of a weird one. So one of the reasons that I'm moving off Udemy is with Udemy, you can't interact with your students at all. It's really, really hard. You can send mail shots out, but you're not really helping anyone. Do you know what I mean? They can ask Q&As, but the problem is you can't really do anything. So that's why I launched my own platform, and I started trying to build my own thing to help more people. But there's a couple of people who really stand out. So I didn't have my courses live at this point, but there was a girl called Anna, and she was an apprentice. She was like, I think she was 18 when she joined Art2Cloud, which is a consultancy I was at. And I just remember really, really bright girl, really intelligent, and she just couldn't get her head around the admin. And she wasn't asking for help. So in the end, I became her manager, and I started looking after her. I started coaching her and mentoring her. And it was incredible. She found it so hard. She was using lots of different courses out there, and she couldn't get it to stick because it wasn't teaching her in the right way. She was just like a bundle of energy. A bit, you could probably tell I've got quite a bit of energy. Well, she was a bundle of energy as well. So asking her to sit there for half hour while someone drones on, she couldn't do it. It just didn't work for her. So I started coaching her and started helping her. And then I started, because I used to train salespeople as well, I started to really enjoy it. And she went and she passed, and she was chuffed. So I was happy with that. There was a guy called Seth Minton, who don't know if any of you heard of, but he's the youngest certified Salesforce Administrator, passed when he was 17. So his mum put me in touch with him, and he wanted to get into it. So I helped give him a bit of extra help. So he was quite young, and he passed it on his first attempt as well. So that was really good. That was, I think, only about 6 months ago. And then there was another lady who I've helped recently called Suzanne, who had gone through some programs. She paid a lot of money, but she couldn't get certified. She just couldn't get her head around the exam and how to pass it. So I'll just give her a little bit of coaching again as well. And she passed it the next time. So I can't say I specifically remembered the first person, but I remember lots of people along the way. Like for me, I tend to remember people who feel like me, you know, like I've had a struggle with it. And to some people, it comes really easy. And if it comes really easy to you, then all the power to you, every credit, you know, it's brilliant. But if you've got to work at it harder and you need to look at it and attack it from different angles, then that's where it resonates for me, because that's what I have to do when I look at certain concepts. I read them, I'm like, doesn't make sense. Build them out, doesn't make sense. So then I start creating my own notes and I start breaking them and stuff like that. And I'm like, now it makes sense. So they're kind of the people who stand out, I should say.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think every student here absolutely recognizes that there's a moment when somebody says something to you and you're like, that's how I needed to hear it.
Yeah, it's just how the penny drops, isn't it? That's exactly how it is to me. The way I liken it is, it's like when you listen to music and you can have a song that is sung in multiple different ways by multiple different people, and they can change the meaning of it instantly. It's the same lyrics. It's exactly the same lyrics, but they change the tempo, they change the beat, they change the emphasis, and suddenly it changes the meaning of the entire song. And that's the way I kind of look at teaching, is if it's not working one way, then there's no point going over and over it again. It's not working. You need to change it, change the angle of attack. And that's kind of what I try and do with Get Force Certified, really, is just teach people all the different ways. And that way I know I've got to have like a 90% chance of getting through to people, because I'm teaching in so many different ways. So yeah, and I guess that kind of builds on to the next one, really, is what do I hope to accomplish in the future, and where does Get Force Certified go from here? Well, it's a really good question. This was one of those questions I've read and I was like, do you know what? I've never thought about that, actually. I'm just kind of taking it each day as it comes. To me, I still think it's still bizarre that I work for myself. I work from my home office, because I've worked in offices all my life or in warehouses. I'm like, hang on, I'm sat here. I'm nice and warm. I can go get a cup of tea when I want. I can take the dog for a walk. Like, I'm so grateful for just how lucky I am to be doing what I'm doing. But yeah, as I think about it, like, for me, the big passion I have is to help people transition into tech. Like, on paper, I am probably one of the worst people you can imagine in tech. Like, genuinely, I move around a lot. I'm not much for sitting down. Like, I've got a standing desk, so I'm sat down now, but usually my desk is up. Like, on paper, I've got no degree, like no further education, just fell into work and stuff. So realistically, you'd think, don't give him a chance. He's got no chance. But I'm actually all right. I'm not too bad at what I do. So, and I've met so many people like that as well. So for me, it's this idea as there's so much potential out there that companies miss out on because they want a degree, or they want them to be 18 and straight out of university, or they've got to have all this experience in computer science, or they dropped in to be an accidental admin. Like, sometimes I think there's quite a few people who look down on people who were trying to get into the ecosystem because it was easy for them. There was an accidental admin, and like, how can it be so hard to get a job? I mean, I just fell into it. Surely everyone just falls into it. Like, that's not the reality. Do you know what I mean? It's brilliant for you, but for a lot of people it isn't. So for me, I really want to help people transition into tech. I mean, ideally Salesforce, because I know Salesforce, but if I can just help people understand that they can learn technology even if they have no tech background, and it's those super skills they have. Like I've worked with some healthcare workers, teachers, people like mechanics, for example, and there was one bloke I remember, he was from a manufacturing background, and he could tell you all this massive manufacturing process from start to finish, what goes in when, what could be a potential issue, where the bottlenecks were. Vincent, it was called it. And he was like, but how can I transfer that into tech? And I sat there, I was like, you joking me? Do you know how much people would pay for you to go in there and be able to actually apply what you know to a Salesforce org, to an instance, and to be able to pick these points? I mean, imagine the depth of business analyst a guy like that can carry out in manufacturing. And it's that I really enjoy. I enjoy people who almost not discount themselves, that's the wrong word for it, but they don't realize the potential they've got. And then they go in and they're like, wow, I can actually really help people here. So that's, for me, the goal is not just to help people become certified. I think people becoming certified is the first step. I mean, we all know if you try and apply for a job now in the Salesforce ecosystem and you don't have a certification, you're not really going to get anywhere. So you need to have a certification to get somewhere. I mean, there's no harm reaching out. You might get lucky, but realistically, from my experience, you pretty much need a certification to make any headway. But it's not just about the certification. It's about teaching people how to succeed in the role. Because again, I remember when I was studying for my admin, and I could tell you about pick lists. I could tell you all the theory about stuff. And I remember day one, I went in there, and this is a laugh because this is when I first started, which is like, 3 years ago? Well, yeah, wow, time has flown. But I remember going in there, first org I'm working on, and Amy, who was my boss, she was like, right, just go change that pick list field, put these extra values in. I remember going in there, and I was in Object Manager, and I was on the account record, I think it was, the account object. And I'm going to the right-hand side and clicking edit, and I'm dropping down edit. Well, you can't add pick list values there, can you? And I'm sat there, I'm going, but I've read it. That's how you do it. You know what I mean? I'm like, what? And then it was like, right, I click there. So sometimes, and I see this a lot of people have the certifications and they'll go in and then they can't really bring the value that they can because they haven't got that. So you'll probably notice in a lot of my courses that I do, there's always use cases, there's always business cases, because you need to be able to build it and you need to be able to actually apply that knowledge. So that's kind of where I go for. And kind of in like a little bit of a different answer to that as well is, I always remember when I used to travel a lot with work, I remember going to Thailand and I remember going around all these temples and walking through the rainforest and all that stuff. And I always remember, like our little guide always said, it's about health, wealth, and happiness. That's what life's about. So for me, I just want to help that with other people. I just, you know, when we talk about health, I don't just mean physical health. I mean mental health as well. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're doing a job that is stressing you out and you're worrying to pay the bills every single day, and you sat there at the end of the day just thinking, I don't want to do tomorrow, it's no good. And Salesforce isn't like that. I mean, you are going to get companies like that, but realistically, out of all the people I know and all the companies I've worked with, they're very few and far in between. And usually they're just growing themselves. So they're not doing it maliciously. They just don't understand. And then again, when we're talking about the wealth aspect, I mean, we might as well address the elephant in the room. Like, you get paid a lot of money if you're good at Salesforce. That's the top and bottom to it. The top Salesforce guys get paid a lot of money, but it's also that spiritual well-being as well, of not having that stress, of being able to really kind of switch off when you want to switch off and do what you want to do. Like, there's that. And then again, the happiness part is, I could tell you, after having to drive an hour and a half to work and an hour and a half back from work, having 2 kids that I barely saw, like, my life before Salesforce was a misery. Honestly, it was a misery. So I just want to help other people like that. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's kind of what I see Get Force Certified doing, is helping people transition into Salesforce and just having a better life, a better work-life balance, earning more money, and just being happier, really. Life's too short to be miserable.
Yeah, and you've got to take that first step, which is really what you're helping them with. Take the first step. Don't be afraid of the first step. Here, let me help you with the first step.
Yeah, it is. It's all that first step. You're 100% right. Because let's be honest, it is scary when you look at that admin exam and you look at the breakdown, and then you open up Trailhead and you've got a trail mix that is 68 hours long. You're like, what on earth? How am I meant to learn this? So yeah, it's just to make it more accessible and more easy for people, really.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, the next one, and then we'll get onto the learning ones. So again, I'll rattle through this one. So this was a weird question for me. Like, how have you built such a great reputation? I don't know. My accent, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I never really considered myself having a great reputation. I'm not that guy. Like, I'm quite an introvert. Like something like this is actually really uncomfortable for me, because I'm in front of a camera, and this is why I find the courses so hard. And that's why you'll very rarely see my face on screen, because I find it really awkward doing stuff like that. But I think a lot of what I've seen, and hopefully this is what's coming through, is I just am who I am. I'm just me. I'm not trying to be corporate. I'm not trying to be some influencer. I don't have some weird angle that I'm coming at. Like, I'm just being me. And maybe people like it, maybe they don't. But I'll tell you what was funny though. When I went to Dreamforce in September and I met a couple of students out there, the number one thing they all said to me, I thought your accent was fake. I'm like, no. I was like, no, it's my real accent, pal. They honestly, they was like, I thought it was a fake accent. I was like, no, that's me. So
isn't that hilarious? I just want to say, I think that you model what everyone here should be doing, which is very authentically, what are you, friendly? And so you make friends, and you don't wait for someone to give to you before you're giving to them. And then you go places and you do that. And that's really all it is you've shown up, made some good friends, offered some help where it was needed. And that ends up equaling a really fantastic reputation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's about paying it forward, Joe. Like, I had so many people help me when I was starting out. So there's a guy called Johann Furman, who's a CTA, he's a German CTA. And I always remember, because when I first got into Salesforce, and I was like, right, because you look at it and like, well, the more certifications I have, the more money I earn, and the more recognition I'll have, and the better opportunities I have. So I got in there, got my admin cert, got a couple of certs. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go for CTA. That's my goal. and was I'm going to get a CTA. And Johan Furman came up on my LinkedIn feed. I was like, right, I'll connect with Johan. Jumped on a call with him, and even to this day, I speak to him quite regularly. And we don't, it's not like he's a paid mentor, or like he asks me for stuff, I help him out, he helps me out, and I think that's what a lot of it is it's just giving back and helping people. Like, you never know who you're going to meet, and you shouldn't be giving from a point of, oh, I'll receive later on or anything like that. But for me, if you can make someone's day easier or someone's life easier, then you should. Why wouldn't you? And I think maybe that comes through in what I do, because I do genuinely, like, for me, what I notice is there's quite a few companies or quite a few people out there who, oh, I'll help you with that, I'll help you with this, or I'll do that. But it's almost a number thing. Like, for me, all of my students are personal. Like, when someone reaches out to me and they're having problems, I've got to solve it. I've got to fix it. It's like, I remember when I moved over to the new platform and I put all the questions across. So I moved all these questions across for these exams. Didn't work on the new platform. Did not work on the new platform. So I literally worked all weekend. I got about 4 hours sleep for about 3 or 4 nights, and I rebuilt them because I knew people were counting on them. And that's kind of what I have is for me, it is personal with me. Like, I do want people to succeed. And if people don't succeed, I want to know how I can help them succeed. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just because I am who I am. And the fake accent, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, we'll move on to probably the ones which more people want to know about here is questions about the learning the admin content. So what topics do you know students struggle with and why? And how can we effectively use your course to improve our scores in that area of confusion? So Mike, okay, so the biggest thing that I have with people is when you first started learning about Salesforce, it's like this magical, mystical thing. You're like, whoa, look what this does, and that can do that, and that can do that. But you know what? Honestly, it's just a fancy spreadsheet. And the sooner you kind of get your head around that, it's just a fancy spreadsheet with a sexy interface. You can start breaking it down then. And once you get past that, it all starts to make a little more sense, because you realize that objects are really just tables of data, which again, if you're from a non-tech background, like even that, when someone said, oh, it's just a table of data, I was like, well, what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? So, but once you start getting your head that it's just literally a page on a spreadsheet and it's a tab. So an account is literally a tab on a spreadsheet, and you've got your columns and your rows and stuff like that. Then it starts to make a bit more sense, and it demystifies it a little bit. And for me, and this is what I always laugh about, is the first 2 sections in that admin certification, which is config and setup and object manager and lightning app builder. They're the 2 most difficult. They're the 2 most technical. Like, genuinely, just if you can just keep going 1 foot in front of the other, get through that, it will make sense. Like, I always use the phrase that Salesforce, when you're learning any Salesforce product, it's like a jigsaw, because you're looking at it. But when you make a jigsaw, you've got all these thousands of pieces, and that's what you're learning on Trailhead. You've got thousands of pieces that are all coming together, and you can pick them up and you can look at one individually and you go, right, okay, I know business hours, but how does that fit in with the bigger picture? Well, what you need to do is you need to get to the end so where you can see the bigger picture, and then you can see your gaps. So it's like when you do a jigsaw, you put everything in, you take your big sections, you get it all in as you go, and then you've got bits that are left over, and that's how they slot in. And that's what I'd really recommend to people is, if you don't understand the concept, there's no point going up. If you've not done the entire like trail mix, or you've not done the entire course, there's no point going over that video 6, 7, or 8 times, because there might be something that just isn't dropping, like we talked about earlier about the penny dropping. It might be like that, and you'll watch something in service and setup, for example, service applications, and you'll be like, yeah, now I understand why business hours are there, because it affects that. And that's what I would say is keep going through it really and doing that. And for me, the next thing is flows. I know flows are scary. I remember when I first looked at flows, and it was a developer who was trying to teach me. And it was Johnny Fox actually who was trying to teach me. Oh yeah, just put a loop in there, and then you get this array, and you do this and you do that. What are you on about? What are you on about, pal? And that's it. With flows, the big thing I would say is it's the Pareto 80-20% rule. Is 20% of what you're going to do with flows is, or let me rephrase that. I should say 80% of what you want to do with flows, you're going to be comfortable doing just by using 20% of the components. So that's it. And then that further 20%, that final 20% that you don't really know how to do, you look it up, because realistically, like, no one remembers all that. And you have a course, you can go back to that course, you can go back there, but there's such use edge cases. There really are edge cases that, you know, even the best people I've known, even like technical architects who I know, they don't know everything, and they still have a cheat sheet that they go to. And that's what I'd say is, don't let them overwhelm you. Just start working through them. And I know, occasionally, you've done the course, haven't you? And I was saying to you, like, when I did that elements deep dive in the beginning, like, that's like 50% of the course. And that literally took me about a month to do, because I had to design a flow which taught you all those things. But the beauty behind how I did that was, you know exactly how the data elements work now. You know exactly how the logic element works. Like loops, for example, loops scare people. Like, but you know, once you think of a loop, and this is how I always think of it, is all you're doing is you've got a collection, you've got 5 or 6 different records, and you're just working through them one by one, and then going back to the start and doing that. Whereas some people will come out with some really complex stuff, and it's not. So again, with flows, I would say don't let them scare you. You can do them, really. So yeah, so that's kind of the tips I would give.
I just want to say that one of the things that I love, and so it's not a surprise that it took you so long to put that together, because it's beautifully constructed. But the order that you learn is so important.
Yes.
In being able to effectively put things together. And this is why I think that everyone deserves an instructor. When you're learning something complicated, that's where you need great education, because you need somebody to save you time and to do all that work and then present you with a nice little course.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to give you an idea, that actual the flow that we build, which is like the account management wizard, that took me literally probably about a day and a half to design that. That's just on a whiteboard, because I'm old school, so I've got a whiteboard over there. That's on a whiteboard, because what I wanted is, I wanted something that you could see what we was doing step by step. So I knew it had to be a screen flow, and that way we could live see how it was working and what was going on. But it was finding something which, and you probably noticed this, like repetition is key. So we go over each bit 3 or 4 times, but it's not like we're going to go over it once and then we'll do it here. A little bit later on, we'll do it again. A little bit later on, we'll do it. So it's spaced repetition, which is, again, one of the techniques that I try to build into all my courses. Like that, it really helps. And it really helps. And once you start mastering those bits, then you're laughing, really. The rest just starts dropping in. And what I found funny is a lot of people who've been doing it, they've then gone to do like, you know, like the record triggered flows. And it gets to the use case, like, oh, I know how to build that. Like, we've not even covered them yet. Oh, yeah, but I know we did that earlier on. And that's it. And sometimes you have to flip your learning. Like, that was the big reservation I had about this course, was I flipped every other flow course on its head, because every other flow course starts with, these are your 5 types of flows or 6 types of flows. Like, these are all your types of flows, and this is what they do. Well, to me, the type of flow is just the trigger. That's all I look at it. It's just the starting block. It's the rest that you need to know. So how can you try and learn exactly how to build a record triggered flow if you don't know what the elements do? Like, it's like trying to run before you can walk. You know, it doesn't matter how fast you move your legs, you're going to fall over if you don't know which way to put them in. So that's kind of how I looked at it. And yeah, it seemed to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So so for the people who are not in this class, and so your other students, right? So one of the things I think that is so important is that you're hands-on. And so it's not that you learned it just by doing this, but that it was learn, do, learn, do, learn, do. And, you know, my students, you know, the students here in the academy, they all know, like, they're nodding going, oh my gosh, yes, homework, you know, that application, that ability to execute and to do and to come back. That's where so much of the deeper learning happens.
Exactly, 100%. And this is like when I mentioned before about the angles of approach when you're trying to learn as well. Like, that's what I think is really important, because I try to explain things in different ways at different times, because the first time might not stick, the second time might not stick, but the third time, like, oh, right, that makes sense now. So
So everyone listening, I hope that you're feeling like good about yourself. If you're sitting here thinking, like it took me 3 times to get through this, what's wrong with me? It's like nothing's wrong with you.
no,
Nothing, right? Like this is a learning process, and that's just
it's
what that's what
it's
it's like.
true. It's so true. And that's probably the biggest tip that I give to people is a lot of people we're kind of the way that the world and stuff. I gotta sound old, don't I, saying that, but the way the world is and stuff now is everyone expects instant success. Everyone expects to be able to fire up a trail, do a trail in 10 minutes, and know it inside out. It doesn't work that way. Do you know what I mean? You've got to keep going over and over and over. It's like cooking. Like when you're cooking a new meal or a new dish or something like that, it's never right the first time. And then you're like, right, let's change this, let's change that, and it starts working. So it's just kind of repetition. That moves kind of on to the next question from Michael is, what are the most effective ways to study for the certification exam? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to point you to the website, getforcecertified.com. Because if you go to all the bundles and the courses and you scroll right to the bottom, there's a free courses section there. And in there, it's 13 lessons on how to study effectively, because this is all stuff I've learned throughout the years. Like the big thing for me is it's all about meta learning. It's like how to learn, how do people learn? Because if you don't really know how to learn, it's going to be a nightmare for you to learn because you not really know what's most effective. And for me, I looked at how I taught people. I looked at how I taught my kids. I looked at how I learned, and I just broke it all down. I did loads of research. So there's like I said, there's like 13 tips in there of how to do it. But for me, I've written some down, which is, what I would recommend, the big ones. The biggest one for me that a lot of people don't do is the actual preparation. Don't get me wrong, it's so easy. And I've done it where you go, right, I'm going to get that certification. Where's the trail mix? Let's go into it. Bang. And you're straight into it. And you're straight doing the trail mix straight away. What you want to do is you want to take a step back, have a look at the exam guide, and just take some time, look at the sections, look at the objectives, and see what you can pick out of them. So with the exam guides, like they are cheat sheets, because if you look at them, like on the admin, one of the first ones is, company settings. What's company settings? Well, if you think about it and you go into your org and you go into setup and you type company settings in, you get a list. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to do business hours. I'm going to do fiscal year. I'm going to do this. Like, take the time and just break it down. So I'm planning on doing a platform app builder course. So I've just done that now. And I've got a list of 250 concepts that I need to cover. Now, that is the big list. And what I'm going to do is obviously go chunk them down, because asking someone to go through 250 videos of me is hard work. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to combine them. And this is another tip as well. Is like, we all know, for example, let's have a look. Web to lead. We all know how web to lead works. Well, guess how web to case works? Exactly the same, just for a different object. And this is what you want to do. You want to try actually combining stuff. Like, you'll figure it out as you combine stuff and you start chunking it. So whenever I think of business hours, I never think of business hours in isolation. They're always with escalation rules. And that's kind of what I would recommend, is start chunking stuff together, and it'll be easier like that. And like I say, structuring your study is a really big one. And it's about breaking down the bigger projects into smaller projects. It's like, for example, floors. If someone says to you, right, learn floors, you look at it, you go, look at all this. How am I meant to learn all that? But then when you go, well, actually, I've got a section on interaction elements, a section on logic elements, and a section on data elements. Well, what about if I just start learning through them and it's like you say, step by step. That's that, that's how you do it, step by step. And that's what I really recommend. I mean, a couple of other big ones. Another big one I always recommend people is concepts first, details second. Don't try to learn how to configure something if you don't understand what it does, because it doesn't make sense, because you're going to be configuring it and thinking, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. Now, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to have the broad strokes, like lead assignment rules. Well, I understand if a lead comes in that, and I always liken it to something I know, like travel, right? So if a lead comes in for Asia, that's going to Dave. Lead comes in for Brazil, it's going to Katie. That comes in for Greece, it's going to Helen. That's how I always remember it, because that was my team. And then it all makes sense. Like, well, actually, now I understand it. How would I configure it? And I know if I'm thinking through it, well, if there's something on it, like the location or the destination, well, I know it needs to go somewhere. So that's all assignment rule does. And it's relating it to stuff like that. We've mentioned about, build and get hands-on. That's the big thing. And another big one for me, I mean, you'll find I think the course it's about an hour long, so I'm going to be stealing another hour of your time. I apologize, but there's so much in it. And the other big one for me is teaching others. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever heard it, but when I started learning Salesforce, my wife isn't interested. She's not bothered. There was no way my kids were going to be bothered either. I didn't know anyone in the ecosystem. So I taught my dog, and that was literally what I did. A big white German Shepherd, called Ada, and I just used to talk to her. I was like, right, well, this is how this works. Da, 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 da. And what I found is when I was doing stuff like that, stuff I thought I was confident on, I actually wasn't, because as I was listening, I was like, well, hang on. Your voice is going up there. You've got an inflection point in there. Or I'd be like, oh, you stumbled there. And I was like, right, I need to go back and rehearse it again. And the beauty about it is, you know a concept when you can explain it really, really easily, really clearly. And that's kind of what I pride myself on, is my ability to take a really complex subject and to break it down. Like loops, you could ask some people about loops. They'll give you a half hour about them. But for me, the only way I look at it is, you've got a collection of records and you want to edit them one by one. So what do? Well, you put them in a loop, you go through them one by one. That's it. That's as clear as it is. So yeah, I would say teach others. But honestly, that course is free. Have a look at it, and there's loads of tips on there. Really, really useful tips. So I'd really recommend. And the videos are only 4 or 5 minutes long. So nice and easy to get through.
I've gone through your course, and I recommended it early on in our program, because there aren't a lot of really great pieces of advice on how to study, right?
Yeah.
How do you get through this stuff in a way that works for everyone, right? That works, across people. So I know a lot of the students here have taken it. So yeah, fantastic. Let's talk more about how to get certified, and then definitely. We have some questions too about how to get those jobs.
Perfect, definitely. Well, just before I move on, because it just popped in my head then with what you were saying there, like the big challenge I had was I didn't have large blocks of time to study. Like, if you can get 4 or 5 hours studying, then every credit. I mean, I wouldn't recommend studying for that long without a break anyway. But for me, and what I'd really recommend with people is, you set a date that you want to be certified by. So I generally reckon, like, for most people, I think 6 months is attainable. If you can dedicate most time, you could do it in 3 months. If it's, you're really struggling for time, then maybe push it out to 9 or 12 months. But really, I think between 3 and 6 months is a sweet spot. And for me, I did it in 51 days because I was just mad. I had to get it done. I didn't have a choice. I had a lot of pressure to get it done. So that was what I did. But what you want to do then is you want to start planning your study sessions. Like, go, right, it's like you have gym sessions, or you have gym classes. You go, right, well, I know 7 o'clock on a Friday night, I'm doing that. Or it's like my little lad's football training. I know he has that at a certain time at night. I know he has football on Sunday as well. And that's what you want to do with your study sessions. You want to take that approach to them, but then don't just block the time in. Don't just have 30-minute study session here. You want to get really specific, because how many times have you sat down when you've got half hour to spare, and by the time you've figured out what you're going to study, it's gone? I just do it all the time. So what you want to do is you want to look at it. And again, this is where it goes to the preparation about breaking the exam guide down. And you go, right, I'm going to study X, Y, Z there. And this is the link for it. Even put it in your calendar. Put the link in for the video. Put the link in for the trailhead. Whatever you need to do, just so you can open up your calendar and bang you straight in there. Yeah, it is front loading, but I'm a firm believer in front loading a lot of the effort. I do it in all the courses. And that's what I really recommend, because it is going to take you the time to do it, but the amount of time you'll save on the back end and how effective you'll be, like you'll become like a robot, like a machine. You sit down, you fire, you go, right, bang, I'm doing that, boom, boom, boom. And the amount of progress you'll make is unbelievable. So this was a really good question next as well, which was, what keywords have you identified on the exam? Like answers with the word always and always, or how can you help us navigate the questions? Well, the big method I came up with, well, in fact, that's a lie. I didn't come up with it. There was a few of us who were talking about this. So I've got to give credit to Sam about this as well. And we were talking what I came to call the ABC method. They called it the 3-point method. I like the ABC method. And basically, you break each question down to, A, what is the actual question? Because Salesforce questions, the answers. And once you can understand the questions, the answers make sense. But trying to understand that initial question is really hard. They're so poorly worded. You're like, what has been asked here? So you need to actually understand the actual question, understand what it's about, and understand what it's asking you. That's the very first step before you even look at anything else. Then B is about cutting out the bull crap, because in that question there's going to be loads of rubbish, which will be like Ursula Solar has done like, put through the chaff. You want to get rid of that nonsense stuff. Just focus on the keywords of what the question's asking you. And then what's the caveat? Like the big thing that always tricks me is you can have a question, you're reading the question and the adrenaline's pumping, you're rushing through the exam, you're like, right, I've got 105 minutes, I've got to do 60 odd questions, blah, blah, blah. So you're trying to, right, if I can do this in 10 seconds, then I'm good. But the problem is it's like anything. There might be one word, just one word in that question that flips it on its head. So always try and account for a caveat. Try and work out if there is a caveat in there, because that can flip it. And if you can go through the questions and you can break them down that way, you'll be amazed at kind of what you see. Now, like Seth, I mentioned him earlier on, he's just recently done the platform app builder. Now, I did mine like 2 years ago. So at that point, you still had workflow rules and process builders and stuff like that. But what he said me with this one was, he noted, he got like 90% on the process automation stuff, which is, or business logic, isn't it? I think it's classed as, which is like 28% of it. He said the big thing for that is that he noticed was there was different questions which would say built, as in like, what can you build, or what can you configure to do X, Y, Z, whereas there was like, what could do this? And that's a really tricky part, because I'm still trying to get guidance from anyone I know at Salesforce about how to approach this. But he's told me that if you get a question that's basically asking you, what can you build, then you're going to go with flows, because you can't build workflow rules or process builders anymore. Whereas if it's something like, well, what can do that, then you've got to change your idea, because realistically, I know they've been retired, but I find it very difficult, this idea that they're just going to be taken off the shelf and they're just going to be turned off, because there's so many orgs and a lot of people don't want to learn flows. So it's knowing that kind of thing. That's one of the big things I would say, is just look out for that. And make sure you read the question multiple times. Like I have this 3-step review I like 3, so I like the number 3. It's easy to remember. So I have like a 3-step review process, which is, with that, what I recommend is you go through the exam, make sure you're reading the questions, don't rush for it, go through the exam on your first time, use the ABC method, look out for those caveats, and give everything you've got. If you're not 90% sure on a question, or sometimes I'd even say 80% sure on the question, mark it for review. Go through, get to the end. You can then see a summary of the points you've got, and then you can go back and do them again. And you know what time you've got left then. So then you spend a little more time. I mean, you never get to the point where you're spending 20 minutes on a question, for example, but you've got more time because you know what you've got to play with. So then you do your second review and you've got through there. Now, at that point, there's probably still going to be a couple of questions that you can't answer, or you don't know the best answer for. In that case, then I'm afraid like you've just got to give it your best guess. And again, it's another plug. I apologize, but there's another 3 course where I've got all these exam techniques in, which I'd recommend, which is like process of elimination. And again, for this, the reason I wanted to do that was because so many people don't, because it's been that long since we've sat exams and multiple choice exams, like we don't know. And in my opinion, like those exams are hard. They're really hard. So if we can just help people understand how to approach them, because it's not cheating or anything like that. It's just helping people perform at their best in the exams. And yeah, so you go through that, you do your second review, and then on the final review, what you then do is you just go through them quickly, but not too quickly, and you're just making sure you've not made any silly mistakes. And that's all you're doing. You're not combing through each question again. You're just going, right, how does that sound to me? That reads right. That answer looks right. Bang, we're done. And then you move on. So I always use that free review method. It's worked for me. It's worked for a lot of the people I've helped. And that's what I'd recommend, really.
I think that one of the best things about having or doing something like what you said is having a strategy for review, because the last thing you want to do in a certification is go, I don't know what to do. right? Like you want a
Yeah.
strategy you don't even have to think of. I know what I'm doing here. Oh, this one goes for review. Okay, this one goes for review. This one doesn't go for review. Like you know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly, that's it, 100%. And so the next one was, what other resources do you refer students to so that they can better master Salesforce? Well, for exam prep, obviously I've got my own stuff that I recommend, but Focus on Force has really good mock exams as well. So I always recommend Focus on Force. And this is the really good thing about the ecosystem is I've never seen this in any other industry, including, when I've worked in travel as well, is there's a network of people out there that are just trying to help other people. And it's not like, well, if you buy theirs, then you're not going to get mine, or they're my clients. It's none of that. We all just try and help each other. That's all we want to do, is we want to help people. And there'll be people who you can spot who are not interested in that. And, it comes across in the posts or anything like that. And you've probably seen them, like, that's how some people are, but the vast majority just want to help other people. So I say Focus on Force is really good. Quizlet is good, but it can be very dangerous as well, because with Quizlet, you don't really know the answers, and you don't know if you can trust them. However, what I would say on the flip side of that, it's great for prep because you've got a question then. You could check your knowledge. Maybe you don't believe the answer they're giving you, so you don't count that. But you've got a question, you've got a bank of, there's probably thousands of questions in there now, but you can go into that. You go, right, that's the question. Do I know that? Let me go and double check it. Because a lot of that will reaffirm your learning, because you're not just trusting the answer, you're actually proving it to yourself as well. So that's another good one. Now, for developers, someone sent me this website the other day. Now, I've had a look on it. I've never used it because I'm not a developer, and I don't intend on becoming a developer, to be honest. The whole lines of code just blow my mind. Like I say, that Johnny Fox is a great developer, and I went to see him one day, and we all use ultra widescreen monitors, and he turned his, like portrait way, and it was just all these lines of code. I was like, no, thank you. But there's a website called campapex.org. Apparently that's really good. A couple of people I'd really recommend as well. Warren Walters. Excellent developer, MVP. He does a lot of stuff. Really, really good guy. There's Vanessa Grant. If you're looking at becoming a business analyst, she's the one to look at. She's really good. There's a guy called Stephen. I mean, I could send an email with all this on as well. But there's a guy called Stephen Church. He's really good about flows. Just posts like everyday little tidbits and stuff. If you're looking for Brad, he's called Brad Rice. He does a bit of like job hunting stuff. He's really good with the branding. So maybe not from a technical perspective, but in terms of putting out a brand, he's really good. You've got David Nava, who's VetForce as well. Anything Salesforce he knows, so he's really good to connect with. There's a guy called John Garvins as well, who's really good. And then you've got like Unofficial SF as well, which is, and of course, I've got to give an honorable mention to Johnny Fox as well, because I think he's brilliant with what he does. But the big thing I would kind of say is, different instructors teach in different ways, and what works for you might not work for someone else, and what works for someone else might not work for you. Now, luckily, a lot of the courses out there, they're not like thousands of pounds. I mean, you've got them, and I can understand them when it's live training, because you've got that kind of stuff. But make use of them. Like, just make use of them, listen to them, get them, and you could probably get discounts on them as well if you speak to the right people. Is just make use of them. Now, again, like the story behind GFC is, I set it up because nothing really worked for me. I tried like three big people on Udemy, didn't work for me. I tried Focus on Force. I really rate the mock exams, but the idea of 148 slides about security just fills me with dread. So it didn't really work for me, that, but Trailhead worked. But again, it's all, there's nothing wrong with it. Everyone teaches their own way. Just find what works for you. And again, for GFC, I've had a lot of requests for live training, which I never really intended to do, but I like this kind of stuff. It's intimidating for me, like to look in a camera and stuff like that, but I feel like I can get more passion across and more engagement, and I can help people learn more. So I'm probably going to be moving into that next year as well. But yeah, I would genuinely say there's so many resources out there. Yeah, there's loads, but if you follow a couple of key people, you'll find them. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say, really. I hope that helps with those ones.
Absolutely. I took some notes on that. And if you happen to have a list
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
happy to distribute it. But you and I have talked, and we both share the belief that you shouldn't just have one instructor, have many.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah.
No, have many. Have as many as you can.
Yeah, yeah, it's like chocolates, like a whole
Yeah,
box would be great.
it's true that. Perfect. And right, I know are you all right if I carry on for a little bit longer because we're just moving to the last section?
Yeah, if
Oh,
you still have
yeah,
a little more time, because
of
it's
course.
job hunting, and I know that that's of a
Yes, this
lot
is
of
why I want
interest.
to cover it.
And if anybody does have to leave, like absolutely understand. So this is recorded, and you'll be able to catch back up. So yeah, keep going.
Perfect. Yeah, so these were questions about getting hired. Now I put in big bold writing here, caveat, I'm not a recruiter or a career coach, so please take what I say with a pinch of salt. This is just my personal experience. So when it comes to getting a job post admin cert in today's economy, do you have any insights to getting hired and why? So who is getting hired and why? Now, for me, I haven't seen anyone for a long time get hired without an admin cert. I'm not saying that's the truth. I'm just saying that is my truth. That's what I've seen. So I think you need to have that. The big thing I have seen is it's people's soft skills, the communication, the empathy, the ability to have a conversation with people and to ask questions. So many people are scared of asking questions. And this is the big thing I always tell people is when you're interviewing for a job, it's not just them interviewing you. You have to interview them as well. You need to know you're going to fit into the culture because culture is so important. You want to try and understand how they work, how the teams are structured, what you can be expecting to do. And yeah, you do have kind of like the byproduct that makes you sound really interested in the role. So it looks really good. But for you, if you're going to make a decision, you need to make sure you know exactly what's going on. And a lot of that comes from the soft skills. So I'm a really, really big advocate of developing your soft skills. Networking, that's a big one for me. Again, I probably took the harder approach when I was trying to get a job because I wasn't even on LinkedIn. I just fired up LinkedIn. And the whole reason I actually fired up LinkedIn was because I was like, right, well, who's going to hire me? Well, I don't even know any Salesforce companies. That's the place to go. And that was what I did. I jumped on there. So, and this was something that worked for me. And I don't know if it'd work for other people, but for me, what I did is I literally went onto LinkedIn. I searched for anyone who had Salesforce in the name, who was within like 50, 60, 70 miles of me, because it's the UK and it might be a bit bigger in the US. And I think you're better with remote working than the UK is as well. So I just found anyone who had Salesforce in the name. I had a look at where they worked. I had a look at, the job titles. And then I found the companies. And what I did, the call I made was realistically, I didn't have the tech background. I didn't have the degree. What could I bring to someone? It was like, well, I know I'm quite versatile. I could turn my hand to more stuff. So what I did is I went for the smaller companies. So I found the smaller consultancies and I was going in there going, hey, I can do pretty bit of everything really. You could put me in front of clients. I could do this. I could do that. And I must have messaged and emailed, no word of a lie. In a month, I probably must have done 150, 200, just to try and get edgeware. And that was kind of what I did it. And the way that I did it, and something that I wouldn't recommend, but it worked for me. Because again, you've got to remember at this point, I was on 17 grand a year. I was on next to nothing. So for me, I was like, and most admin roles in the UK, I think at that point, we're paying like 35, 40K. So it would have been a massive jump for me anyway on my base. And I just went to him and I said, look, you don't know me. I don't really know you. Pay me 25 grand a year. We'll have a look at it after 3 months. And at that point, I was 10 grand under market value, an absolute minimum. There was no recruiter fee either. So that's probably saving them, 15%. And that was how I got in there. And I was very, how could I put it? I was very astute in the way that I did it because I said, right, in the 3 months, after that, then we're going to look at it and I want to be on market rate. Like, yeah, that'll be fine. So we did that. And then it was right. For every cert, I want an extra 5 grand. It was like, all right, we'll do that as well. And that was kind of how I built it up. So sometimes it's just about getting your foot in the door. And I think, again, what I've seen with some people is I've seen some people who I've helped coach and mentor who got certified and they're like, all right, I want 45 grand straight away. And you're like, no, it doesn't work that way. I hate to break this to you, but the Mason and Frank salary survey isn't actually that accurate. And you're trying to tell people like, look, you just need to get in there. You get in there and your first job is always the hardest job to get. But I promise you, once you've got 12 months experience, you've got recruiters banging on your door, and you can quite easily, if you've gone in at a low rate, you could quite easily double your salary just by moving after 12 or 24 months. But it's all about getting that first role, and it's all about that numbers game. Talk to as many people as you can, networking with as many people as you can. And the big tip that I give people, which I've not seen many people do, but when they've done, it's been a showstopper. Have a project, have a mini project, a personal project. And it can be anything. Like, I saw a lady who was at Demo Jam, and I was having a chat with her the other day. She built a fly fishing app. Like, fly fishing and Salesforce, how do you put them together? But she did, and it was bloody brilliant. It was really good. Do you know what I mean? So, like, anything you could turn your hand to, whatever your passion is, like music. I know there was some mentions of musicians, like music. Build something to help you with music. Now, I can't advise what, because I know nothing about music, but do you know what I mean? Like, you'll be able to apply Salesforce concepts and automations to that. So if you can go in with someone, and that's the biggest question. Like, when I used to interview people, for me, the culture fit was the big one. It was the soft skills. It was who they were. You know, are they a nice person? Are they going to come in and are they going to upset everyone? Are they going to cause havoc? But once you got past that, the next bit then was, how can I trust that they can do what they did? So an example was, I was interviewing for someone to replace me when I left my company, and it was a CPQ role, because I was doing CPQ at that time. And this bloke came in, he had like 6 years experience, he had all these certifications, really nice guy. And I was talking to him, and I was like, oh, and it was like you know, an off the cuff comment. I was like, oh, just explain to me again how like bundles work. And he couldn't. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute, that's a bit of a red flag, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's something like that. But if you get into a situation and you're interviewing and they go, oh, right, tell us how validation rules work, for example, or tell me what the difference is between profiles and permission sets, which is always a good one. You could tell them, but you could go, actually, I can show you. I've got a project here. I can show you. And a lot of the time, the interviews or your first couple of interviews tend to be remote interviews. So you can go, oh, look, I'll just show you my window, and you can walk them through it. And I'm telling you, if you can show an interviewer something you've built and you can explain to them how it works and you can demonstrate that you know what you're on about, you're answering every single objection there. Like, what can they say? Oh, well, we're not sure that they're that technical or they're technical enough. Well, just showing you a project. so that's kind of what I would suggest, really, in terms of that.
So I just want to highlight the takeaway here. Number one, you had a strategy, and you did not wait for polite strategy. Like, I shall wait calmly at my desk and see if anybody needs me. It was a, how can I get out there? And so you were out on LinkedIn. You said, here's my strategy. This is what I'm going to do. And you did it every single day. And this is what it takes to move the needle. When I job hunted 7 months during the pandemic. I job hunted 7 days a week. I set a goal. How many jobs am I going to find and apply to? And I custom build a resume for every single one of those jobs. They did it. And that was my strategy. And it became really clear. A lot of the jobs I was applying to, they were unmanned. They were robo jobs that were left out there. And my feeling was, I don't care. One day it'll be real. I'll be there, right? I'll be there. And I love that that's what you did. And so you just went and found the person and said, look, I'm the person you're looking for.
Yeah. And another thing that my Salesforce recruiter friend told me as well, and man, he's a really good recruiter as well. He said, do you know what, Dave? He said, 90% of recruiters have no idea what they're doing. Said they genuinely don't. That's internal and external. Like, said even consultancies like these agents said they don't know what they're doing. All they do is they get a list and they're like, right, must be this certified. And I sat there and I was like, let's be honest, Dave, right? If your CV goes in front of someone, they're gonna go, no chance, get out of here. So I was like, but if I could speak to the hiring manager might go, actually, that guy's got potential. Let's see. And the job I actually got was because I went to the CEO of the company. Like, I went to Ben Stevenson, messaged him on LinkedIn directly. I was like, look, you know, I know it's taking a chance on me, but will you give me a chance, blah, blah. And he came back, because it was during COVID that I was trying to get hired. So in the UK, like, everything was shut down. Like, we had lockdown, everything was shut down. Companies were downsizing, people were getting laid off right and center. And there's me. Hello, please will you hire me? So I was the one who stuck out going, right, I'm going to do it. And he was like, you know what, we might be expanding, you know, like later on in the year, so keep me in mind. So I carried on going. I ended up getting a role for NG. Well, no, it weren't an NG. They were a consultancy, but they were very data heavy. Like Salesforce was a tiny bit of what they did. But I was like, well, it's a start, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? At least I'll be working with Salesforce. And when you've got a job, generally it's easier to get another. And I can say I'm working with it. And then this Ben messaged me out of the blue. And I remember I've got the message still in my LinkedIn because it made me laugh. He was like, hey, Dave, are you still looking to get in the wild west of Salesforce? and I just messaged him back and I said, I'm sorry, Ben, I'm starting this new company. You know, I can't do it. And he was like, look, let's come for a brew. And I was like, right. So we met for a brew. And I knew instantly after meeting him and the COO, who's a lady called Liz Rhodes, I was like, I've got to work for them. So I've got to work for them. So I ended up making the decision that I was going to go back on my word, which I didn't want to do. But at this point, it was like, I have to do it because they were a small consultancy and I knew I'd get more experience there. And what stuck out to me was when I spoke to this other company and I was dealing with the owner as well. And I was like, look, really sorry, but I'm going to go for this other role instead. She just said, right, no problem, and put phone down on me. And I was like, whoa, I dodged a bullet there, didn't I? So that's kind of, yeah, it is a numbers game. And this is the big thing I always try and tell people is there's a lot of people out there who say, oh, it's easy, get certification, you'll get, 500 grand a year straight off the bat in your first role. It doesn't. It's going to take hard work. But don't be demotivated with it. The harder you work, the better it is at the end of it. The more effort that you put in, the sweeter it is at the end. Like, it genuinely is. And this kind of moves on to a question later on as well, which was about, I think it's one of the last ones about technical interviews. So I'll come back to where we are in the list at the moment. But when I was interviewing for Salesforce, it was 3 interviews. So first one was just with a fellow solution engineer, just had a bit of a chat, really nice guy. Again, I think the way Salesforce hire is they have like a first kind of stage to make sure that you're not going to upset anyone or you're not a pain. Because I have to say, it's working for Salesforce, everyone who works there is really nice, like really, really nice. Everyone, it's almost weird how nice everyone is. So I had that as my first stage. Second stage, I had it with 2 more senior solution engineers who put me through my technical paces. And then the third one was a panel interview. So it had one of the directors, had the 2 advanced solution engineers, and then the other guy who'd it was actually not him, it was a different guy who'd come in to basically be a pain and try and throw me off a game, really. I was asking really daft questions, but for that interview, I prepped for like about 2 weeks. I had to prep for it, and I must have put about 30 hours in that. Now, I wouldn't have done that for any other company, just being honest. If it was any other company, that would have said, right, we've got this project we want you to do, because it was a fictitious rail company. So I had to talk about how they could use Sales Cloud, how they could use Service Cloud. I then built in a bit of field service, because I knew field service as well. So I was like, ooh, chance to show off here. So I did a little bit of that, built a community. So I put a lot of hours into it. But I only did that because it was Salesforce. If I was asked to do that for another company, I wouldn't have done it, just because of some of the stories I've had. But kind of going back to the Salesforce thing, I remember walking in there and I'd rehearsed it and and I was like, ready, you know what I mean? And the level of confidence I had, because I knew what I'd built, it didn't make the interview easy, because I thought I'd failed the interview at the end of it. Because I went in for a solution engineer role, which is like second up, so they've got like tiers of engineers. So so I got in for like the second tier, which was just above a graduate, and I'd gone through all this. And I remember at the end, the director, Nithya Shaw, she's called, she's brilliant, absolute brilliant lady, so nice. And she had this like stone face. She was like, why are there no more figures and stats in there? Salesforce has got a great story. Why haven't you got this? Why haven't you got... And I was starting going, I don't know. And I came out of the interview and I rang Johnny, because it was Johnny Fox who came. I was like, oh, Johnny, mate. I was like, I'm so sorry, pal. I was like, I've absolutely bombed this interview and it's going to look bad on you. And it's like, don't worry, Dave. It'll be fine. Sat there and I was like, oh. And the thing about Salesforce recruiters as well is they're not fast. Their process is not fast. I didn't know for about a week and a half. Came back and I ended up getting the lead solution engineer job. So it was like 3 rungs above what I'd gone in for. And that was, again, because I'd been able to prep for these technical interviews. So what I would say is, and again, I'm telling this story to really emphasize that project, that capstone project. Like, if you've got something you can show in there, you're not only going to demonstrate that, yeah, I know a little bit about Salesforce. They're going to come off the back of that and they go, whoa, did you see what they've done there? These guys know how to roll, and it makes a big difference. So that's what I would say from that part. So I apologize for wandering to a new story there, but
it was a good story. It was very good.
Yeah. So again, moving on to the next one, we've got what skill sets, both soft and hard skills, would I recommend post-certification from Sarah? So for that one, I would say probably one of the biggest, I know I've labored the point about soft skills, but one of the biggest one is communication. But the other one that you might not think of is presentation skills. Like being able to tell a story and keep them interviewed, keep them entertained while you're kind of interviewing them as well. It really makes that difference. Like we've all been there where we've interviewed someone or we've been in an interview and it's ended up more like a chat. You know, it's more like friends having coffee or having a beer or something. And you come out of the interview and you're like, oh, that was good, wasn't it? Or, you know, like, you always remember that when you've interviewed someone and they've gone and you go out the door, you're like, I could have gone for a pint with them, or I could have had a cup of coffee with them. Like, do you know what I mean? That's what I would say. And learning those soft skills about building rapport and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really important because I see a lot of companies try and shortcut it with some like crazy psychological tests that are like 160 questions and stuff like that. But for me, like my personal view, and I, you know, like I said, this is all caveat, take it with a pinch of salt. I wouldn't put myself through that. I'd be like, no, I know I'm a bit chaotic. I know I'm a bit mad anyway. So why do I need a test to tell me that? Like, I just wouldn't do it. And I'd be like, it's all right. Because again, the other thing for me when someone does that is it shows to me they don't really care about me. They're just ticking numbers. You know, they're just ticking boxes. So that's why I wouldn't do that. But in terms of what would I recommend, like discovery skills, I think discovery skills are really important. And this is where I think the business analyst certification is an unsung hero. Like you speak to a lot of people who are in the ecosystem, who are good at what they do, and they really rate that certification because to pass it, you do need to know about business analysts. And it doesn't matter your role. It doesn't matter what role you go for, whether you go for an admin, a consultant, a developer, an architect, whatever role you're going for, you need to know how to conduct business analysts. Even if it's just the most basic charts, like RACI charts and flow charts and those kind of stuff. And knowing how to write user stories is a big one. And again, talking about the project to show someone, if you can twin that with slide presentations that, again, are clear and they're crisp, and you've got a user story in there as well, you've ticked every single box. I mean, I don't know what they can say to say, no, you're not getting the job. Like, if you've done that, you've done everything you would do on a project. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. And the other one as well is flows. Like, flows are no longer a nice to have, in my opinion. I don't think they're a nice to have now. They're a must have. If you can't write a flow, and I'm not talking about like majorly complex flows, if you can't write a simple record triggered flow, you can't automate an org. It's as simple as that. And Salesforce's value comes from its ability to be able to automate boring and repetitive business processes. I think that's literally like textbook words, isn't it, what they use? But generally that's it. You know, you need to be able to automate, and flows are your only way of doing that now. So I would say soft skills, communication, presentation skills, storytelling as well. And I don't know, would you class business analysts as soft skills? I guess you would really, but you've got then the harder skills of the documentation. And then again,
much of that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a soft skill. Stakeholder management, one of the best skills you could ever have.
Oh, 100%. So the funny story, there was a guy who started at Salesforce as an early solution engineer, Robbie. I'm still in touch with him. He's a really nice guy. And he'd come out of the army, so he was a vet force, and he'd been like his really advanced lead senior, like fraud investigator kind of thing in there. And I remember him in dealing with clients and his ability to just be unfazed and to manage stakeholders. No matter, they could have thrown stuff at him and he just would have moved out of the way and then come back and carried on. Like, the guy's exceptional, but that is a really good skill to have. But you can only really develop that over experience. But learning about it and understanding and being able to yeah, I understand stakeholders are hard to manage. This is what I would do. And again, a lot on that BA certification, there are questions which talk about, I think one of them I had was like, you're trying to get an appointment or you're trying to get a meeting with a stakeholder and he keeps blowing you off. What do you do? And, you know, knowing that is quite good as well. So that's what I'd recommend for that. Now, the next one for newly certified admins, what roles should we be applying for besides associate admin and junior Salesforce admin? And that's from Ryan. And with that one, that is a really broad stroke question. So for me, I would always look for anything with Salesforce in it. So junior consultants, business analysts, even pre-sales, like try and play to your strengths, your background. So a lady I coached, her background was publishing. She knew marketing inside out. I was like, well, why don't you use that? Why don't you apply to companies that specialize in marketing? Or from healthcare, if you know healthcare, apply for companies that deal with healthcare. Like, focus on your transferable skills. Like, if there's one thing you do after this call is sit down for half hour, look at what you've done in your past, look at what your hobbies are, and really think about your transferable skills. Stuff you might not think is transferable will be. I spoke to someone who worked in healthcare. She's like, worked in healthcare, what do I know about it? I was like, well, hang on, what about bedside manner? What about having those awful and awkward conversations with people? Like, it's a superpower. Like, you know, you can use that, look for ways you can use it. And that's what I would say. Like, if you've got stuff like that, then bring it in. Any kind of transitional skills. Like, if you've got kids, for example, well, that is great stakeholder management, especially if you're teaching them and you're training them. Like, that is perfect. Like, anything you can think of, you want to bring in. And sometimes it sounds cheesy, but if you're genuine about it and you're not just kind of throwing it out there and you've thought about it, you can really, really make it stick. So that's what I would say. The other thing I would kind of say as well is be careful with recruiters for junior roles. Now, the reason for this is just being completely facts and figures based, right? Is a recruiter will generally get 15%. That's what the average is, 15% in the UK of what they play. So a junior admin in the UK will get about 35 grand, really. So they're going to get, what is that, 7.5 grand roughly? I don't know, my math, something like that anyway. But it's not a lot when you compare that to if they place an architect at 100 grand, they get 3 times the amount of money. So who do you think they're going to work harder to place? And don't forget with recruiters, not all of them, because I know a couple of good recruiters, but a lot of them, they all have metrics, right? They all have KPIs about call times, number of calls, stuff like that. If they're running low at the end of the month and your phone suddenly starts blowing up with all these recruiters and they're keeping you on the phone for a half hour to talk about what you've been doing, how your weekend is, how your holiday was, I can guarantee you they don't have a job for you. They're just trying to boost the numbers. So be very careful with recruiters when it comes to junior roles. They're not all like that, but that's just some that I've experienced. And then again, for that is, you know, anything in Salesforce that isn't crazy. That's kind of what I've written down there. So realistically, you're not going to get a technical architect job. I wouldn't get a technical architect job. That's just the way it is. So you don't want to be applying for that. But anything that has Salesforce in it, because again, it's a lot of these recruiters and a lot of small companies, they don't even know what a Salesforce administrator does. Half of them think you're just filing paperwork away half of the day, and the other guys just haven't got a clue. Like, you might see it as CRM manager or, you know, anything that you can think of. There must be a way that you can actually just search for the term Salesforce in any job listing and look through all the bits as well. Look through all the requirements or experience or stuff like that. If it says, you know, management of a Salesforce instance, then you can go, right, well, I'm going to apply for that, but I'm not just going to send my CV in. Do a bit of homework, look at the company, think about who could be the hiring manager, reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, I can see your job advert for your CRM manager, and I know it's Salesforce. I'm actually a Salesforce certified administrator. I know it inside out, and this is what I can do. Like, this is kind of how you want to approach it, rather than trying to build like a massive building. Just try and focus room by room, do a little bit, and just be quite accurate and articulate of what you want to do. So how do we get hired with no degree? I see jobs and most prefer a bachelor's degree. Christine. Yeah, remember, job specs are a wish list. That's the easiest way I can describe them. They're a wish list. They're from hiring managers who want the best they can get because, you know, they might they might want someone that they know the budget can't get, but they want to put the list in there just on the off chance they get someone. Same as recruiters. I mentioned before, recruiters, a lot of them are really nice, but a lot of the time they don't know what they're talking about either. So all they do is they get given a list from a hiring manager and they say, right, I want, you see it all the time. They'll say, like, you know, they've got to have 27 years experience with CPQ. And you're like, well, it's not been around 27 years, but do you know what I mean? There'll just be a wish list, right? So if you can hit 60% of what you see on that wish list, go for it. Don't bother about the degree. Like, if they bring it up, they bring it up. And generally, that's why I try to avoid recruiters at companies. I'll go to the hiring managers because, again, they just have it in their mind that if you've got a computer science degree, then you're a better bet than anyone else, which isn't really the case. So I'd say it's hard because I know it's difficult and I know you will get turned down from companies like that because you don't have a degree, but you don't know unless you don't apply. So just give it a go. And the ones where they're really sticking the muds about it are your big consulting companies like your PwC, your Accenture, your Capgemini. Like I was recommended for a role at PwC, which was like a senior delivery consultant. And it was a friend of mine who recommended me for the role. I was like, good, it's good, it's good. Got through the first round interviews, you know, yeah, this guy's going to be good. I was like, oh, I'm on to a winner here. Got to the actual internal recruiter who was to sign off. It's like, you don't have a degree. I was like, well, no, I don't have a degree. Well, you can't work here. I was like, well, what sense does that make? I've just flown through all these technical interviews, but I don't have a degree. And that was it. It was there. That was the end of it straight away. So you are gonna run into a couple of brick walls. I'm not someone who sugarcoats stuff. Like, you will run into a couple of brick walls, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and just take those shots. Just go for them. Look at that job list. It's a wish list. Just remember, it's a wish list. Realistically, if they got everything they wanted on that recruitment, on that list, they'd be paying double the money. That's the way it is. Do you know what I mean? Like they say, junior admins with 3 years experience. Well, hate to tell you, but 3 years experience, if I got 3 years experience now, I think so. But do you know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm saying. I was at Salesforce with 2 years experience where I wouldn't even be able to get junior roles for that. Like, how does that work? So yeah, they're a wish list. And the big thing I would say is network like mad. Like, I'm not the best person when it comes to social media and stuff like that. Like, I've got LinkedIn, I've got Twitter, don't really know how to use it. Facebook, don't really know how to use it. Like, it's there, it's great. I don't even know what it's for actually. I think I had it because they used to have a like a football thing on it. So I used to go on that and it was like a football game. You played all your mates. So, but that's what I mean. Like, I'm not a social media guy. I'm slowly getting better at it. I'm trying my best. But the thing I am good at is I'm pretty good at creating rapport instantly. So if I can speak to someone, I can generally stay in touch with them. And that's what I would say to you is network like mad, not just online. I mean, if they've got community groups in your area, get to them. You won't believe the amount of stories where people have been at community groups and they've been like, oh yeah, I'm just breaking, I'm trying to get into this system, I've got this, this is my background. And it's been a hiring manager who's gone, all right, we'll come for an interview with me, and they've ended up with a job. Like, networking is so important, and it's about getting your presence, which is something I've been learning over like the last year or so. Is if people don't know who you are and they can't find you and you're not showing in front of people, then you can't get offered these hidden opportunities. So post useful stuff. Anything you find useful, post it. And this is why you'll notice whenever someone posts about my course or getting a certification and I'm tagged in it, I always respond, because it's not necessarily from me, but I've got quite a big network. And if I can just comment and I can just get someone out there to see them, then it'll work. And I'd recommend doing that with, if you take a course from someone, you watch a YouTube video, you see anything that's really, really good, comment about it and tag the person in it. It's the law of, I can never say the word, but reciprocity. Do you know what I mean? Like, they will like back, they'll thank you, and then suddenly your name is getting out there more and more and more. And networking is key. It's really, really key. So that's that. I'll keep going. Are we all right? Flipping out. You've had to listen to me for 90 minutes. How are you still here?
I think we're pretty much through the list, if I remember the list of questions.
Yeah, I think what we've got here. So I've covered a lot of that. Let's have a look. I think one which was really good here was about, do additional certifications give you a better chance of getting hired. If you have 2 or 3 certification versus 1, what about non-Salesforce certifications from service? So again, another really question. So thank you for that. Definitely, extra certifications help, but there's a little bit of difference to that, which you might be expecting, right? Is first of all, don't forego networking to get another certification. There's no point having 10 certifications and having 12 connections on LinkedIn and not being able to get a job. Like, there's no point. Like, try and do it balanced. I generally think if you've got 2 Salesforce certifications, possibly 3, then you're in a really good spot. And that might sound quite a lot, but it isn't too much really, because you've got your admin. So that's your big one. And honestly, I can't tell you, that is the toughest cert. That, like, probably shouldn't be saying that because people are sitting it soon, aren't they? But it's a tough cert, I promise you. Yeah, it's a tough cert, that one. But here's a surprise for you, and I don't know if anyone's noticed this. And I noticed this because I've been planning the platform app builder. About 60 to 70% of what's in the platform app builder is in the admin. So guess what? You get the admin, you crack on with the platform app builder, you'll probably have that in 30 days. And then what I would always recommend is, I genuinely think the business analyst cert is incredible. I really do. Even if you don't pass it, and you can just tell someone, I'm studying my platform app builder. I'm studying my business analyst. This is what I've learned so far, and this is what I'm excited about. Like, that kind of stuff. Really, really important. I mean, the 2 associate certs, so the associate and the AI associate, they don't really carry much weight at the moment. So they're a little bit more, higgledy-piggledy whether or not you would go with them. I mean, for me, the way I look at it, sorry, I'm just changing my layout because my screen's gone a bit funny. But the way that I look at it with that is, the associate to me is a really good stepping stone for your admin. So if any of you are studying for your admin and you've not done your associate cert yet, I'd really recommend you would, because you cover reports. I'll try and remember off the top of my head. You cover reports and dashboards. You cover the ecosystem. You cover user interface, and you cover something else as well. I think it's like the object manager, a little bit like the data model. Like that. That'll cover probably about 30 to 40% of your admin. So if you imagine it like steps, right? If you do your associate, you've done 30, 40% of the admin. You do the admin, you've then done 60, 70% of the platform app builder. Like, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, the AI associate cert, I've done that. Personally, I didn't find much value in it. Now, it may be because I'm not an AI expert and it's only really basic. But again, it's just one of them. But I would say that. And the other ones I would say as well is, if you have any other certifications that you can relate to going for a role. I don't mean like your 100-meter swimming certification. I mean like a project management, agile, or something like that. Then that is really powerful. Like, if you can go into interview and you've got your admin, you've got like maybe platform app builder, or maybe you've only just got admin, and you do that, and you can go in there and you can go, well, actually, I'm project management certified, I'm agile certified. Like, they know instantly, the development life cycle. Like, well, hang on, I don't have to train them this. And I tell you from experience, the amount of people who have come in without that knowledge, and you spend so much time getting them up to speed. Someone comes in with that, you're like, wow, brilliant. Even if you're more of a technical person from a development perspective, and maybe you're certified, see, I don't know anything about programming, like C#, I know that's one. Say your C# or your Java or JavaScript, you've got something like that. It might not be specifically relevant to Salesforce. However, it shows you've got that technical aptitude. And if you know HTML or you know CSS, that's a really good indicator that people look out for, because it means you can build a community, which is basically a website. Oh, it's experience site, isn't it? So it's called experience site. It's community. Like, you can build a website basically if you know that. So you can pick up Community Cloud or Experience Cloud really, really quickly. And the other one that people discount a lot, which I always looked for, was anything to do with leadership or coaching. Like, and again, this is where I was on about transferable skills. So I used to coach my little lad's football team, and I used to throw that at everyone. Like, when I was interviewing, oh yeah, I coach a lot of 9-year-olds play football. Like, doesn't matter, they haven't won a game for 2 years, I still coach them. Do you know what I mean? Like, this was what I used to go with. Because it shows you can do stuff. And again, it's stuff like that which you might write off, like, and genuinely you probably do, but just take the time to think about stuff like that, because you can really use that to skew what you do. So yeah, like I said, that project management, leadership, coaching, agile. There was one person who I interviewed who was an NLP practitioner. I didn't know what that was till I interviewed them. It was like, oh, it's neuro-linguistic programming, and they were telling me about it. I was like, these guys would be really good in sales. They'd be really good with presentations, wouldn't they? They can brainwash people. Let's get them involved. So you know, these stuff which you might think doesn't really apply, it will if you know how to kind of personalize it. And I'll just cover one more, if that's all right, before we run that out of time too much.
That sounds good with me.
Yeah, which was, how do you identify volunteer opportunity with a company for temporary or contract work so you can gain experience from Mary B? And this one, again, is I have no experience of doing stuff like that. The only thing I could tell you is some of the stories I've heard. One of the biggest problem stories I heard was a lady who I helped. She went through a paid program and she ended up doing like 150 hours of volunteer work for free. Oh, wow. Non-profit, which like I would like, there's no harm in doing volunteer work at all. I'm not saying don't do volunteer work, but I'm saying be careful, because there are companies out there who will take advantage of you. So you need to be careful, because if you're spending 150 hours on a non-profit org, then realistically it's a slightly different data model anyway. So you've got to be careful of that, because you've not got to understand that, which opens up another Pandora's box. But also that's time taken away from you actually job hunting as well. And you know what it's like when you've worked a full day at work. Can you really be bothered sat in front of the computer for another 4 hours trying to find a job? So you need to kind of like be a bit careful with your own time and your own energy as well. So you want to do that. The other thing as well, from the other side of it, is I've worked in a lot of orgs where they've had a lot of volunteers, and a lot of what happens is a volunteer will come in for 1 month here, for another month here, for another month here, and another month here. And it's like, if you're trying to learn how to play golf, for example, or something really technical, I always use golf as an example because I'm rubbish at it, so I always think it's a really good one, is different coaches teach different swing methods. And they'll say your swing should be like this, or it should be like this, or whatever. Like, if you've had 4 coaches in 4 months, your swing's going to be all over. Like, and this is what happens with some of these orgs. You go in there, you don't know what you're walking into, but you then feel a part of, how can I put it, like commitment, that you are committed to help them, and you walk in there like, whoa, I don't know what to do. And sometimes you'll end up trying to fix it and you'll make it even worse. Other times you'll just kill the org and you'll break the org. And then it costs them a fortune to roll it back, which technically you're not meant to be able to do, but it can be done. Just Salesforce charge a lot of money for it. So you want to be careful with that volunteer work. There are companies out there that can hook you up with volunteer work. Personally, I don't know who they are, and I can't recommend anyone because I've not been involved in it. But I would just say, be careful with your volunteer work and make sure that volunteer work is actually relatable. There's no point volunteering to do something that isn't relatable. Like, try and keep it stuff that's relatable. And apart from that, I think I've covered everything. Have I? Don't know if I missed anything.
I think you have. You've been so very generous with your time. I know that people have been like, they've been following along in chat and making all kinds of good comments. And so as we wrap this up, I want to say that what everyone here, I hope, walks away with is with their level of love and passion, like really renewed. A lot of people in this meeting right now, they're tired, they're exhausted. They've been like that 6 months to get certified. They're on that. And this is the last 2 weeks of that. And, you know, like, Salesforce is fun. Like, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, smiling and talking about it, if it wasn't a joy to do and to be around the people. And it's a very friendly ecosystem. And so I hope that everyone here takes your advice to heart and says, you know what, I'm going to job hunt in that same way. I'm going to meet people. I'm going to make friends. I can't wait to get into this. And you've given them so much good advice. So everyone, feel free to unmute and just say thank you and goodbye to Dave. And I'll make
Thank
sure.
you so much.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're very welcome.
It's
I
been
hope I'm not bored you.
wonderful.
Thank you so much. It was
No, it was
amazing.
great.
Enjoyed
Such
it.
a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome, honestly. And, you know, the thing I would say, anyone who's due to sit their exams in the next few days, just fly through that exam tips course that I've got. Like I say, it's completely free. It don't cost anything or anything like that. But there might just be one thing in there that gets you an extra point or two, and that could push you over the edge. So
I was 20 minutes late, and it's your fault because I was taking your practice tests and I got wrapped up in them. I with you for so long, and I got here. I was preparing so much.
So you're very welcome. And please, if anyone needs help, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Drop me a message. I might not respond immediately because of time difference, but I will get back to you. I promise you.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Seriously,
Thank
though,
you,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Dave.
evening, all.
Thank you,
so
Dave.
much.
You are fantastic.
Thanks.
Oh,
You're
thank you.
awesome.
Cheers. Take care, everyone.
Right.
Cheers.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone. I'm stopping the recording now. And over here.
I'm going to need that recording. I got to catch the first 20 minutes.
That's all right. Everyone will get it for sure.